Hello everyone, I'm Chen Yu from Group 1. We are going to present an article about children bilingualism, and our group distribution is shown on this slide. My introduction part will succinctly introduce literature review, the topic of the study, and the research objects. The paper consists of 4 parts including introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion and conclusion. In the literature review, there is a general opinion that bilingual children perform better than monolinguals when measuring executive functions. There are possible reasons for them because they need to be sensitive to the influence of other languages so that they can choose appropriate vocabularies to better interact with the surroundings. However, some studies do not show obvious effects of bilingual context. In an experiment, they compared the attention between monolingual Spanish and the Basque Spanish bilingual children, while no effects of bilingualism emerged. There are other studies on the frequency of code switching and mixing and language distance, which observe no cognitive effects either. The research aims to study the advantages of bilingual children on executive functions, with an expectation that there are existing advantages in language use. It tries to figure out the critical factors influencing bilingual outperformance. This paper compared 3 groups of 6 to 7-year-old bilingual children with a monolingual control group in the Netherlands, and the 3 groups are matched on age, nonverbal intelligence, parental education, gender, and their differences are shown on the right of this slide. Although both Limburgish and Frisian are regional languages, Limburgish is less exposed to children than Frisian. They also predicts that the Frisian children are more likely to show cognitive effects of their bilingualism than the Limburgish children, and the Polish-Dutch group is the least exposed to Dutch. Executive function tasks in this study tested attention and working memory. Attention means that children can suppress indifference from another language and extract a useful message. Working memory refers to the ability to retain information by language or image. Previous research has shown bilingual advantages in attention and working memory tasks, using similar tasks as those used in the present study. They also expected the bilingual children to outperform the monolingual children on working memory and attention, but because there are also studies reporting no effects, those also reckoned with the possibility that no effects would emerge. There could also be reasons why some bilingual groups differ from the monolinguals whereas others does not. To conclude, the introduction part of the paper mainly elaborates literature review and group explanation in order to supply an analysis structure for the rest part. Thanks for listening. My part is over. Next is the summary part presented by Mu Tong and Zhang Yuxi.
Hello everyone, I'm Mu Tong. Now I will give you a summary about the research purpose and the research design. First, the purpose of the research. In this study, the researchers aim to find whether the bilingualism have effect on cognitive performance compared to the monolingualism, and whether the bilingualism's different socio-linguistic contexts have effects on cognitive performance. And now I want to introduce how the study was designed. First, the sample description. In this study, 176 children aged 6 or 7 years old, which means 72 to 95 months, they participated. And they are assigned to 4 groups with 44 children in each group. The 4 groups are monolingual Dutch, Frisian Dutch, Limburgish Dutch, and Polish Dutch. And in the 3 bilingual groups, Frisian and Limburgish are regional languages, while the Polish is a migrant language. And to exclude the confounding effects, all children are matched on nonverbal intelligence, gender, and parental education. On the other hand, we can see that they just differed in the socio-linguistic context. And then what measures are included in the experiment? The first is the part of receptive vocabulary, which concluded several standardized tasks, and they are used to test the children's proficiency of Polish. And a parent questionnaire was adopted to exclude the factors related to the monolingual children. And next, a backward digit span task and a backward dot matrix task were adopted, which aimed to test the verbal and visual spatial working memory, respectively. And the last part is about attention. The visual sky search task was used to test the children's selective attention, while a flanker test was used to measure the children's interference separation. And at last, I will briefly introduce the variables of the study. And in this research, the confounding variables including age, gender, nonverbal intelligence, and parent education were excluded. So the independent variables in this research are the bilingual groups and the monolingual group. Yes, and the dependent variables are the outcomes of the working memory task and attention task. Okay, the above is my summary and introduction of the research purpose and the research design. Now my group mates will continue to give a summary of the findings of the research. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, I'm Jiang Yuxi. I'm gonna give a summary of the findings of this research. I will elaborate on the point in terms of two aspects. The first part is the working memory. As is shown on the table, there is no notable statistical difference between monolinguals and bilingual on these two tasks. So consequently, this study conclude that there is no bilingual effect on working memory. And the second part is attention. For two attention tasks, a higher score points to a lower performance. So we look at the sky search task first. As is shown in the table, 3 bilingual groups got a lower score than the monolinguals. That means they may perform better than bilingual on these tasks. We can also see that on the table that the Frisian Dutch children got the lowest score, which means the effect was most significant from them. And the Polish Dutch school showed the least indication the least indication they may be beneficial from their bilingualism. So the research took further steps. They divide the Polish Dutch group into the high Polish skills group and the low Polish skills group. And they let children do the sky search task again. It turned out that when the Polish Dutch group was limited to the high Polish skills group, the effect was significant. And then come to the flanker task. As it shown in the table, the flanker effect show individual variation, and it's very significant. And it is indicated by the large standard deviation due to the negative flanker effect. The researcher investigated it. So with all the findings about bilinguals outperform monolinguals in selective attention, the overall effect was particularly carried by the Frisian Dutch and the high Polish skills group. And comparison between the high Polish skills group and the low Polish skills group indicate that a certain level of bilingual proficiency is required for the cognitive benefit development. And that's all about my writing part. Let's head it over to my group mate to introduce the next part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. So, in this part, I'm gonna talk about some strengths and weaknesses that I found in this study. Here's the outline. I want to start by talking about some strengths. So, the first thing that I noticed is that the research is of the interest of most bilinguals because if you search for some keywords on Google Scholar and YouTube channel, you will find thousands of results within minutes, which means that it is a very interesting topic to most of my bilinguals. Secondly, I found the study relatively objective because you can clearly see that the researchers are trying to prevent their findings from biases and values through an experimental design in the first place. And they also adopted mixed data collection methods, which we'll talk about later in this part. The research is also very specific. You can tell from the title of the research. They are adding some conditions to it in order to narrow down the research so as to make the research easy to deal with. Next, I noticed that the researcher also used mixed methods and measures to validate their hypotheses, such as tests, questionnaires, and interviews. And I noticed some details about the study that shows the study has very good internal validity. In testing children's selective attention, instead of using just one task, the researchers use two tasks in order to control the drawing time, thus observe effect solely attributed to the treatment variables, which is the selective attention. And here's the structure of the whole experiment. You can see that it is very carefully conducted, and it also ruled out other combining variables. So that brings me to think about the external validity of the research. The research has very good external validity, which means that its results and findings can be generalized to other settings and other populations, say for example, cognitive performance of bilingual children in Guangdong province. And the treatment variables I just listed in the bracket for your reference. Next, I'm going to talk about some weaknesses of the study. Firstly, it's less original because it's not a new question to be asked, and it also did not generate new theories. Secondly, I can't help but notice that the introduction part of the article is very bulky and poorly organized. So I think subtitles are needed to clarify the whole part. Next, some measures taken by the researchers are less reliable because you can see that there is no standardized tools for Frisian and Limburgish bilinguals, which means that the results may be different when testing with different tools. Finally, the article failed to mention if parents are present when testing children because children are very vulnerable, they need a company while being tested. So that's pretty much all for my part. Next, I'm gonna invite my friend Francis to talk about some implications. Francis, over to you.
About implications for language learning and teaching. According to the findings showed in the article, bilingual children have some cognitive advantages. However, in Muslim families, parents can't provide bilingual environment for children because it's hard for them to master two languages. Therefore, I started to consider if a bilingual education could help children develop a better cognitive performance or some other abilities. Luckily, there are a lot of researches about it. These researches shows that bilingual education has a set of positive effects. For example, children who receive bilingual education tend to have a more rapid progress in literary skills, narrative skills, even mathematical grades. Also, we will point that bilingual education makes people think more flexibly and leads to a better attitude towards different cultures. It seems that children should learn a second language as earlier as they can. Indeed, over past decade, in mainland China, a huge amount of bilingual kindergartens and international schools appears. Most of them are private schools and their tuition fees are extremely high, maybe 10 to 20 times as much as public schools, as you can see in the picture. They have various advertisements to attract the parents. For example, they say, "Do not let your kids lose at the starting line," or "If your kids don't learn English from now, he will be a loser." Such kind of slogans make a ridiculous anxiety for both parents and kids. I don't mean to deny the benefits of bilingualism, but the truth is, we can say as the experiments conducted in the essay, they performed better in selective attention part, but the results distinction is not so huge. I mean, only a little bit better. In the working memory part, monolingual and bilingual children are almost same. Moreover, the proficiency of home or migrant languages influences a lot. If the proficiency is not high enough, the advantages in bilingual children is even smaller. As the uncertainty of teaching quality, especially in medium or small cities in mainland China, I don't recommend parents to send their kids to so-called bilingual school or international school impulsively, because the advantages of bilingual education is limited, but the cost is very high. Spending the high tuition fees on developing kids' other interests may be a better choice. For those parents with a high socioeconomic status, it's really a pretty good thing for them, for their children to receive high-quality bilingual education. Besides, teachers shouldn't sacrifice the teaching content for bilingual education. Next part is Rachel's conclusion. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Francis. I will now make a conclusion. This study aims to investigate whether bilingual cognitive advantage is modulated by the sociolinguistic context of language use. It focuses on two research questions: whether bilingualism has effects on cognitive performance compared to monolingualism, whether bilingualism's different sociolinguistic contexts have effects on cognitive performance. The results indicate that bilingual effects on cognition are found across different sociolinguistic settings. Further findings show that cognitive effects for regional language speakers are modulated by differences in sociolinguistic settings. Proficiency in the home or migrant language serves as a key influencing factor to the development of cognitive advantages for migrant children. As for the research design, the sample consists of 3 bilingual groups divided in sociolinguistic setting and a monolingual control group. Filter tests were applied. 2 attention and 2 working memory were measured with these tasks. The performances of bilinguals on selective attention and response competition support that bilingualism alters the way attention is directed to the environment and enhance selective attention. On working memory, both tasks reveal no impact of bilingualism. The strengths and limitations of this research is evaluated as the following chart. For applied implications, bilingual education is advantageous but not necessary. Additional suggestions for future research include confirming potential moderators of the effect of bilingualism on executive function. For example, code mixing, language separation, and overlap. I will finish by sharing the reference list. Thank you for your time, and that is all.